Pay attention to the security footage inside Jackson Memorial Hospital in Miami, Florida. It is about to capture the last moment of a nurse alive. That nurse is Danielle Miller, a registered nurse, age 34. It's 10:51 p.m. on a Thursday night. The camera positioned above the main hallway shows nurses finishing their shifts, patients being wheeled out, and a few late visitors heading toward the elevators. In the corner of the frame stands a man, gray hair, denim jacket, and a limp in his left leg. That man is 59-year-old Harold Becker, a patient who came in earlier that evening for a minor leg injury. The camera shows him speaking briefly Nurse Danielle as she walks by. She smiles politely, says a few words, and continues walking down the corridor toward the locker area. She walks towards the camera with him behind her, watching her walk and stare at her. He lingers, standing by the vending machines, pretending to read the discharge papers in his hand. But his eyes never leave the hallway she disappeared into. For the next few minutes, he paces. He looks around. Then he moves toward the exit, the same direction she took. At 10:59 p.m., another camera outside the staff entrance captures the same nurse leaving the building with her bag on her shoulder. Seconds later, Becker appears at the far end of the frame, walking toward her. He says something. She turns, looking surprised but not alarmed. From her gestures, it looks like she's offering help, maybe thinking he's lost or still in pain. Then she opens the driver's door and leans in to grab something. Becker steps closer, glancing around once. He reaches for her. The camera freezes there, the door half open, her arm barely visible. Moments later, the car pulls out of the lot with both of them inside. That was the last time anyone saw Danielle Miller alive. This is the story of a nurse who was kidnapped by her own hospital patient. Danielle Miller's shift had started like any other that morning. She woke up at 5:30 a.m. in her modest two-bedroom apartment in Liberty City. The alarm buzzed twice before she finally rolled out of bed, careful not to wake her 8-year-old son, Caleb, who was still sleeping under a blanket patterned with cartoon rockets. She made him breakfast, waffles, orange juice, and a note tucked into his lunch bag, then dropped him off at her sister Tamika's house before heading to the hospital. Danielle had been a registered nurse for nearly 7 years, working in the medical surgical unit at Jackson Memorial Hospital. She was known for her calmness under pressure, the kind of nurse who didn't just treat patients, she listened to them. Her co-workers described her as steady, reliable, and someone who never complained. But behind that professional focus was a woman holding her world together one shift at a time. Her marriage had ended the year before. Her husband had moved out of state, leaving her to raise Caleb alone. Her long hours weren't for ambition, they were for survival. That Thursday morning, the hospital was busy but not chaotic. Danielle's patients included post-surgery recoveries, diabetics, and a man who'd been admitted for leg pain. His name was Harold Becker, 59, Caucasian, listed occupation, maintenance contractor. He'd arrived around 4 p.m., complaining of sharp pain in his calf. His blood work was clean. His ultrasound was normal. There was no sign of deep vein thrombosis. The attending doctor planned to discharge him later that evening. When Danielle entered his room to adjust his the hallway camera caught her passing through, clipboard in hand, hair neatly tied back. Becker looked up from the bed as she walked in. "Guess I got lucky with the pretty nurse tonight," he said. His voice was low, deliberate, and she gave the kind of polite smile nurses give when they hear something inappropriate but choose not to make it a problem. "Let's keep you comfortable till the doctor clears you, okay?" she said, attaching the line. He watched her the whole time. When she turned to check the monitor, he asked where she was from. She ignored it. Then he asked if she lived nearby. She kept working. When she left the room, the corner camera captured him watching her walk away, his head turning slowly to follow her until the door shut. Around 10 p.m., Danielle finally clocked out. Her shift had been long and uneventful, just the way she liked it. She said goodnight to her co-worker, Kendra, who teased her about living at this hospital. Danielle laughed and replied, "Bills don't pay themselves." The footage from the break room shows the two hugging, then heading in opposite directions, Kendra toward the elevators, Danielle toward the east exit that led to the staff parking lot. At that same moment, Harold Becker was being discharged. The doctor handed him his papers and told him he could pick up his medication from the pharmacy in the morning. Becker signed the forms, nodded, and said he'd wait in the lobby for his son. But his son never came. Becker never made a call. CCTV in the waiting area shows him sitting near the vending machine, facing the hall where Danielle would soon appear. He pretended to scroll through his phone but looked up every time a nurse walked by. When she finally emerged, he lifted his head slightly, tracking her as she walked past the reception desk. The camera near near the entrance caught the moment he spoke to her. He said something short and she turned her head toward him with a faint smile, probably assuming he was asking a simple question. Directions, a restroom, maybe his discharge instructions. She replied briefly, nodded, and continued toward the exit. When she disappeared down the hallway, Becker stood still for nearly 20 seconds. Then he folded the papers in his hand, stuffed them into his pocket, and followed. The hospital garage was quiet at that hour. The motion-activated lights flickered on as she walked across the concrete floor toward her car, a silver Toyota Camry parked near the back wall. She reached the driver's side, unlocked the door, and leaned inside to put down her bag. The timestamp on the security feed read 11 o'clock and 26 seconds p.m. From the far end of the camera's view, Becker appeared. He moved slowly, looking around, scanning for others. Then he approached. He said something. She straightened up, still holding the door. Her posture wasn't afraid, it was polite. The footage showed her nodding, as if listening to a patient one last time. She probably thought he was lost, or maybe asking for a ride to the bus stop. Then, as she leaned back into the car to reach for her phone, he stepped forward and grabbed her. The camera caught a single motion, her arm jerking up, the door swinging, then both figures vanishing inside. At 11:01, the car headlights flashed. The Camry reversed quickly, turned toward the ramp, and drove out of view. That was the last confirmed sighting of Danielle Miller alive. The next morning, Tamika noticed her phone had gone straight to voicemail. Danielle was supposed to pick up her son before noon, but she didn't show. By 3 o'clock, panic started to sink in. Tamika called the hospital. They said Danielle had clocked out the night before. She called again at 5 o'clock, then drove to Danielle's apartment. The blinds were drawn, mailbox full, car missing. That's when she called the police. Detective Luis Moreno took the case that evening. He'd been with the Miami-Dade Homicide Unit for 15 years, known for his calm precision and habit of replaying surveillance footage until every second made sense. When he and his team arrived at the hospital, they went straight to the security office. The footage told the story almost immediately. Danielle leaving the hospital, Becker following, no one else in the hallway. They zoomed in on his paperwork, his name clear as day. Harold Becker, Moreno read aloud. Recent discharge, leg pain. He ran the name through the system and found a history of violence, domestic battery, assault, and a restraining order filed years prior. He'd been out on probation for less than a year. At 9:40 that night, an alert went out to every patrol car in South Florida. Bolo, be on the lookout for a silver Chevy Malibu registered to Harold Becker. Less than 6 hours later, around 3 a.m., an officer spotted the car abandoned under an overpass near Northwest 27th Avenue. The driver's door was open, the engine cold. Inside, investigators found Danielle's purse, her work badge, and her cracked phone. But there was no sign of Danielle or Becker. By sunrise, the news spread across Miami. Nurse missing after hospital shift. Photos of Danielle filled local television screens. Her co-workers gathered outside Jackson Memorial, some crying, some holding candles. The public was told Becker was a person of interest. Detectives traced his phone activity. Records showed he'd been moving north along Highway 27 hours after the abduction, his signal pinging near Okeechobee Road. Cameras from toll booths confirmed it. His car was seen at 1:37 a.m. heading toward Palm Beach County. After that, the trail went cold. On Saturday, a volunteer search team discovered a discarded pair of nurses' scrubs in a plastic bag along a rural road near Okeechobee. The hospital logo was still visible. DNA later confirmed the blood belonged to Danielle. Her sister collapsed when detectives told her. Caleb, her 8-year-old son, asked when his mother was coming home. Detective Moreno refused to stop. Every gas station, rest area, and motel on that route was checked. Finally, on Sunday afternoon, a long-haul truck driver in Tallahassee called the tip line. He'd seen the news. He said a man matching Becker's photo had hitched a ride from a truck stop near the highway, claiming he used to work hospital security and just needed to get north. That tip broke the case open. 2 days later, deputies near Ocala found a tent near a canal, hidden behind tall grass. Inside was Becker, asleep, filthy, and clutching a folding knife. He was arrested without incident. When asked where Danielle was, he said she gave him a ride and dropped him off. They didn't believe him. A K-9 unit swept the area. Less than 200 feet away, behind a line of trees, dogs began to bark. Detectives uncovered a shallow grave, wrapped in a plastic sheet. Danielle Miller's body was found at 9:47 a.m. Tuesday. The autopsy revealed she had been strangled, beaten, and left in the dirt within hours of her abduction. She still wore her hospital badge. There were signs of struggle, defensive wounds, broken fingernails, bruising on her wrists. When Harold Becker was led into custody, his expression was calm. One officer asked him why he did it. He smirked and said, "She thought she was better than me." That night, candles Candles lit the steps outside Jackson Memorial. Her co-workers stood in silence, heads bowed, while her sister wept in the front row, holding Caleb. The hospital later released a statement calling Danielle a dedicated professional who gave her life serving others. Detective Moreno told reporters, "The cameras told the story from the start. They showed us what she didn't deserve and what he planned. And the footage that once showed an ordinary nurse walking home from work now served as the only witness to how she met her end." The morning Harold Becker was brought back to Miami-Dade County Jail. The city woke up to flashing headlines: "Escaped patient arrested in murder of Jackson Memorial nurse." The footage of his capture played repeatedly, him in handcuffs, unshaven, wearing the same denim jacket from the hospital lobby. The same jacket Danielle had last seen before her life ended. Detective Luis Moreno sat across from him in the cold, windowless interrogation room. Becker looked tired but smug, resting his hands on the table like a man waiting to be served breakfast. The camera mounted in the corner of the room recorded everything. "Harold," Moreno began, calm and deliberate, "we found Danielle. She's dead. You want to tell us what happened?" Becker's jaw clenched slightly. He stared at the wall, saying nothing. Moreno leaned forward. "You left your fingerprints on her car door, your DNA on her seatbelt, and her blood on your jacket. The only question is whether you want your side of the story told or not." For nearly 40 minutes, Becker stayed silent. Then he smiled faintly, his voice gravelly and detached. "She offered me a ride. Things got out of hand." Moreno didn't blink. "You followed her out of that hospital, Harold. You waited until she was alone." Becker looked up slowly. "You nurses think you're so much better than everyone, always looking down. She couldn't even talk to me like a person. You killed her because she didn't talk to you enough?" He shrugged. "She should have been nicer." Moreno stood up. "You had a chance to walk out that hospital and go home. Instead, you made sure she never got home." He turned toward the door, signaling the end of the interview. Becker didn't ask for a lawyer. He just muttered, "I was tired of being invisible." That was all detectives needed. The confession, partial as it was, aligned with what the evidence already showed. Crime scene technicians reconstructed Danielle's final movements using the CCTV footage from the hospital garage, traffic cameras, and nearby toll plazas. The timeline became painfully clear. She left the hospital at 10:59 p.m., was abducted by 11:01, and by 1:14 a.m., her car was seen on a rural highway heading north with Becker behind the wheel. Inside his abandoned Chevy Malibu, police found more damning evidence: Danielle's broken necklace, strands of her hair, and duct tape residue on the passenger seat. At the medical examiner's office, the autopsy confirmed what detectives feared. Cause of death: asphyxiation due to manual strangulation. Secondary injuries included multiple contusions to the head and torso. The coroner estimated time of death between 1:30 and 2 a.m., roughly 3 hours after her abduction. The lead prosecutor, Assistant State Attorney Carla Newman, took one look at the file and said, "We're charging first-degree murder, kidnapping, and abuse of a corpse." The trial wouldn't happen for nearly a year, but the investigation continued to unfold like a grim puzzle. Becker's criminal history resurfaced in detail: a 2010 conviction for aggravated battery against a girlfriend, a restraining order from a neighbor, and a 3-year prison term served for assault with intent to cause harm. He had been released on probation 18 months before meeting Danielle. Despite his violent past, he had somehow charmed his way through mandatory evaluations, claiming to be a changed man. But the truth, detectives learned, was darker. Becker had developed an obsession with women in caregiving roles. Old court records revealed that he'd previously stalked a nurse who treated him at a rehabilitation facility years earlier. He'd sent her letters, called her repeatedly, and once showed up at her home uninvited. That woman filed a restraining order that was still active at the time of Danielle's murder. When prosecutors uncovered this, the jury's perception of Becker shifted completely. This wasn't a crime of opportunity, it was a pattern. Meanwhile, Danielle's family struggled to process their loss. Her sister Tamika stopped working, dedicating every moment to caring for Caleb. The boy, barely 8, kept asking, "Is mommy still helping people in heaven?" The question broke her every time. At Jackson Memorial, nurses wore black ribbons for a week. A plaque with Danielle's name was installed near the east exit, the same one she used that night. 3 months after the murder, the Miami Herald published an investigative feature titled "The Nurse Who Helped Everyone But Herself." It chronicled Danielle's life, her dedication, and the systemic flaws that left a known violent offender discharged without proper monitoring. Public outrage grew. Hospital administration tightened security, installing panic buttons and escort protocols for all night shift nurses. As the legal case advanced, Becker refused to cooperate. He refused plea deals, insisting on a full trial. "Let the world hear my side," he said to his public defender. That side came out in the courtroom in unsettling detail. When the trial began, began. The jury watched the same footage the world had seen, Danielle walking through the hospital hallway, Becker following. They watched her smile as he spoke to her, unaware of what was coming. They saw him standing by her car, talking, waiting, then forcing his way in. Prosecutor Newman stood before the court and said, "This was not a misunderstanding. This was a man who saw a woman doing her job and decided she owed him something. When she didn't give it, he took her life." The defense tried to argue that Becker acted in a moment of emotional instability, that he'd panicked after an argument. But the evidence of planning was too strong: his waiting in the lobby, following her to the garage, and the fact that he had a roll of duct tape already in his car. Midway through the trial, forensic analyst Dr. Sarah Lim took the stand to explain the final piece of evidence. The fingerprints on the duct tape matched Becker's right index and middle fingers. Blood from the adhesive side matched Danielle's DNA. "There's no doubt," she testified. "He restrained her before killing her." When Becker's turn to speak came, the courtroom went silent. He sat there, expressionless. "She was kind to everyone but me," he said. "I didn't plan to hurt her. But she laughed when I asked for her number. Like I was a joke." Newman stepped forward. "And so you killed her?" Becker leaned into the microphone. "I just wanted her to feel small. Like I felt every day." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Danielle's mother clutched her daughter's photo, sobbing quietly. Caleb wasn't there. Tamika had kept him home that day. After 8 days of testimony, the jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. When they returned, the foreman's voice was steady. "We, the jury, find the defendant guilty on all counts." Becker showed no reaction. At sentencing, the judge addressed him directly. "You had every chance to walk away that night, Mr. Becker. Instead, you took a life that was built on helping others. You left a child without a mother, a family without peace, and a community without one of its best. For that, you will spend the rest of your life in prison." Becker's expression didn't change. As deputies led him away, a reporter shouted, "Do you have anything to say?" He paused, turned slightly toward the cameras, and said, "She should have just talked to me." That single line aired across every major network in Florida. The public's anger turned to disgust. Online forums filled with outrage, demanding harsher protections for nurses and hospital staff. "No one should die for doing their job," one user wrote, a comment shared over 100,000 times. At Jackson Memorial, the night shift never felt the same again. Every nurse who walked that hallway remembered Danielle. The staff garage was renamed and outfitted with new lighting and panic alarms. A small plaque near the stairwell reads, "In memory of Danielle Miller, who cared for others until the end." Her son Caleb grew up surrounded by reminders of the mother he lost. He started a scholarship foundation in her name with the help of local donors, the Danielle Miller Nursing Hope Fund, providing tuition support for single mothers studying nursing in South Florida. Inside Florida State Prison, Harold Becker remained unrepentant. When a journalist from a true crime network interviewed him for a special years later, he spoke casually about the murder. "She thought I was harmless," he said. "People always do." He ended the interview with the same eerie calmness that had chilled detectives years earlier. "She didn't deserve it, maybe," he said, "but I don't regret teaching her a lesson." The program never aired that clip. It was too disturbing. By then, Danielle's story had already become a lesson of its own, a story that nurses whispered to one another during long shifts, a reminder to never walk to the garage alone, to always keep eyes on every hallway camera. And in those cameras, somewhere deep in the hospital's archive, the grainy footage of her last moment still plays silently: the smile, the nod, the man standing too close. A reminder that sometimes, the people who need saving are the ones who save others. And that was the story of the nurse who was kidnapped by her own hospital patient.